Welcome back to the channel. Let's get right to it. The video I want to make right now is about the 3 states that a Republican candidate needs to win if he wants to win the White House. If we go back all the way to Richard Nixon's first run for the presidency, that is the first time we can find a Republican candidate who has won Arizona, Ohio, and Florida and still lost the election. Now, a lot of people know a bit about that election, Richard Nixon versus John F. Kennedy. There were some shenanigans that went on in that election, and I'm not going to state anything as fact, but there is a lot of controversy about that election. So if we take that year all the way towards now, which has been, I believe, about 15 or 16 elections, every single election, if the Republican wins Florida, Ohio, and Arizona, they win the White House. Simple as that. Now, are there other ways you could win the White House? Of course, there are many other ways you could win the White House. But go back and try to find a candidate, as I say, all the way back to the 1960s. And even once you get to the Nixon incident, you can keep going back even further into like the 1930s, and you will not find a single Republican candidate for a long, long time who has won the presidency without Arizona, Ohio, and Florida. Now, you might ask why? What is it about those states that makes it so obvious that if they win those 3 states, they're going to win the White House? Well, let me first go back to when people used to say that if you won Ohio, you won the White House. There used to be a saying is, as goes Ohio, so goes the nation. There was a documentary, I think, made about the 2004 election with that very title. That was true for many, many years. You can go back and find a very similar pattern with Ohio going back many, many elections, where, especially for the Republican candidate, if they won Ohio, it was like game over. Now, that ended the last election in 2020 when Trump won Ohio very easily, but lost the election. But if you go deeper into it and you see the 3 states, Ohio, Florida, and Arizona, you find a similar pattern. Now, why is that? It is my belief that Florida, Arizona, and Ohio are the perfect swing states for each of their regions. So, Florida and Arizona are much more similar to each other than Ohio is to either of those two. But Florida and Arizona are both states with a sizable Hispanic population. They are what you would call a purple state, a swing state that goes back and forth. They are states that are very good representations of each of their regions. Now, Florida isn't considered the South, but it typically does vote a little bit like the South, especially north part of Florida and the Panhandle. And then Arizona, you're getting a little flavor of the West, but the conservatives of the West. So, but you're also getting mixed in a lot of people who have moved from Arizona. So basically, you have 2 states that are sort of moderate in nature, but are prone to voting Republican. And if they do, again, usually the Republican wins. And it's an indicator that the Republican candidate is doing well in the South and they're doing well in the West, at least before California. Then you go to Ohio. Ohio has always been a perfect representation, sort of the Rust Belt. Now, the only time this has kind of bucked that trend is in 2020 when Trump won it, but then he lost those other Rust Belt states. But usually, if you look, someone who wins Ohio is probably more likely to win one of the Rust Belt states. That wasn't the case for George W. Bush, but if you put Ohio, which Bush won, Florida, which Bush won, and Arizona, which Bush also won, you end up not having to win any of those other Rust Belt states. So, why is this important? This is important because Kamala Harris is trying to figure out who she's going to choose as her vice president running mate. Right now, the rumor is that the vice presidential pick is down to two people, like not four, two. Mark Kelly from Arizona, and then Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. It is my belief that if Kamala Harris chooses Mark Kelly, that puts Arizona in play, and it almost guarantees Arizona will vote Democrat again. So, if in fact Mark Kelly is the choice and Arizona is taken off the map, what are the odds that Donald Trump is reelected? Well, in my opinion, they go down substantially. Unless, of course, he does the trifecta, which he did in 2016 and wins 3 Rust Belt states: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But again, why make things difficult on yourself? So if Kamala Harris chooses Shapiro, sure, he may carry Pennsylvania for her. But if Trump can win Ohio, Florida, and Arizona, it's game over. Trump wins. So that's his task. And we hear a lot about these keys to the election. We hear Lichtman with his 12 or 13 or 35 keys to the election. For the Republican, there's only 3 keys: Arizona, Florida, and Ohio.